Hello, and thank you so much for pushing play to listen to Digging Deep, an Okie 811 podcast. My name is MG Govia. I'm the Education and Outreach Liaison of Okie 811, and we're so glad you joined us in this podcast. We're going to be talking about pretty much the member's responsibility or how a member of Okie 811 uses the 811 process. And our guest is Keely Hossman with NuStar Energy. And Keely, before we even take off in our conversation, could you let our listeners know a little bit about you?
Yeah, so I am NuStar's one call coordinator. I've been here since October of 2018. Prior to that, I actually had worked with a public awareness company that worked with a lot of people in the industry. And then actually, my field of study in college was completely unrelated to the industry at all. And I studied criminal justice and psychology.
Oh, okay. So you took the long way to get into the industry as well. I always talk about my introduction into one call life. If you would have told me 10 years ago that I'd be going around the state talking about digging all the time, I probably would have laughed at you. So, but once you get in the industry, I don't know if you're like me, but you realize just the importance of what we do, not only on for NuStar to protect their underground facilities, but to keep people safe and promote the process, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, when I was going to college, one of the big emphasis that I had was I want to help the community, obviously. And you realize just how much in a role like this, you really are helping the community.
Exactly. So NuStar, if people aren't familiar with the company, can you tell us a little bit what NuStar has in Oklahoma?
Yeah, so NuStar actually operates in 8 Oklahoma counties. They're going to be Carter, Cimarron, Greer, Harmon, Jackson, Jefferson, Texas, and Tillman. In Oklahoma, NuStar transports crude oil and refined products.
Gotcha. So pretty much the northwest portion of Oklahoma.
Yeah, so we actually have a little bit. It's going to be more southern, like the Ardmore, Altus type area.
Oh yeah. You know what? I don't have my map in front of me. I should have known that. Now that I think about the counties, it does match up. So good job, Keely. You passed my geography quiz of the day. So
well, I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah, I just try to stump people just randomly because I knew that all along. I promise. So let's dive in to your role with NuStar. You've been there since 2018. So what's a day of Keely's job like?
Yeah, so in my role, I actually place like the immediate calls to NuStar's locators. And one thing about NuStar that's a little bit different from some other companies you may work with, all of NuStar's locators are actually NuStar personnel. So we don't use a third-party locating company. Our locators actually have a number of different responsibilities in addition to line locating. So I'll place out basically dispatch any of the one call tickets that NuStar receives in our ticket management system. And so I'll call them on emergency tickets just to let them know, hey, this one takes priority. And then any other tickets that they may have questions on or, the one call law in a certain state, they know that they can reach out to me and we can kind of go from there.
Outstanding. Do you know kind of your ticket volume? I should have looked this up before. Do you know about how many tickets you process a week or a month?
Oh, gosh, that's really kind of challenging to track down. We usually run it by state and by mobile. Okay. I did not look for Oklahoma before this. But yeah, I typically it's broken out into our regions, and then we break it down further by state and by the individual that's completing those tickets.
Gotcha. Well, I know that just from my history with Okie 811, from my member services days to now with education, I know NuStar's been a name that I see on a lot of tickets, so I know that you are doing a good job on getting those dispatched. So because of our roles, I know public awareness is something that you had a little bit of background in before joining NuStar. What is it like to have that role also with NuStar to help them with their public awareness of letting people know that you have facilities in the area and to contact 811 and the things that PHMSA regulates and things of that nature?
Yeah, so actually, it's interesting because the bigger portion of that is going to land on our locators. So when we participate in some of those public awareness and damage prevention meetings in the state, our locators are actually attending those meetings to meet with the excavators and the public officials and emergency responders, because obviously, they're out there in those communities and they're the ones that know the pipeline and know how to say, oh, hey, yeah, our pipeline's located at, X road and Y road. And if you have any questions, here's my business card. Reach out to me directly. And a lot of times that's what you see with our locators is, we'll get a ticket in and they'll be like, oh, yeah, I have so-and-so's number saved in my phone. Like, they just get to know the individuals in those communities.
Perfect. I know that is kind of a thing, not only coming down from CGA or Common Ground Alliance for those listeners who don't know, and us as liaisons on the one call side, communication and relationships is public awareness. If it's not only just having signs everywhere you can or passing out flyers or what I call temporary trash to people, it's more than just trying to get a logo out. It's actually saying, hey, not only are we here, but we're humans and this is our community and we're protecting the environment as well as the underground facility. And then, of course, the workers and those that are going to be working around the facilities. I know that's a direction that we've taken with our education outreach, and I've seen a lot of companies have similar aspects of that mentality of just not only being a sign, but also being a person that they can contact and to have that safety mindset around those underground facilities.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one thing that NuStar and OK11 does is we work together because NuStar, just like all facility members of OK11, they have a partnership with us that's started by the fact that you have your assets registered with us and you receive locator requests. And then we take that partnership and then we look to do safety education. We look at our webinars. We've worked together with Safety Day presentations and our expo. I know that one thing that was really cool about this is getting permission from NuStar to talk to you about this process and how long or how important it is to utilize 811 as a pipeline company.
Honestly, there isn't a whole lot that, like, I attend virtually, but my role doesn't allow for a lot of travel since I do a lot of the dispatch of the tickets. Right. And so a majority of where that comes into play would be when there's the damage prevention meetings, and that typically are held by Paradigm.
Okay. How long have you partnered with Paradigm? Do you know? And do you send locators to those Paradigm meetings?
Yeah, our locators do attend the Paradigm Coordinated Response and Excavator Exercise Pipeline Safety Programs in Altus, Lawton, Duncan, and Ardmore each year. Okay. So you'll always be able to speak with a NuStar representative at those meetings. Awesome.
Yeah. So I get on the road with Paradigm as well as OK11's representative, and so I'll definitely be looking for your NuStar locators when I'm doing in those towns. So that'll be really cool. So
you go to all of them?
I go to most. All the ones that say Core X or Core Excavator programs, those I try to go to give like a 15-20 minute message on 811 before they really dive into the more of the response type stuff.
Gotcha. That's quite a few meetings, so it does keep you busy.
It does. There's some programs that Paradigm and I work together where I'll have a video that I send them to play. If it's a small or a fewer attended meeting, I may not make the road trip for it, and I'll just send a video for that same information to be passed along. But I do try to get to as many as possible in person because, like we were saying earlier, with public awareness, the relationships and being a face is a little bit more important or more effective when it comes to public awareness than just sometimes a video going out there.
Yeah, and just them being able to ask questions on site.
Exactly. So one thing that you and I talked about before we hit the record button was why 811 is so important. And so I'm going to kind of leave that open question to you, and let me get your thoughts on why is 811 important, not only in Oklahoma, but everywhere that one calls are made.
So I have a kind of personal funny story about my grandfather.
Okay.
And we bought a property from my grandfather, and we were going to put in a new sidewalk. And he had told me that he knew, obviously exactly where everything was on the property. And I was like, no, we still need to have him come out. We need to call 811. It's not a big deal. We'll just wait. Okay, that's fine. Well, 811 tickets in, we wait the 2 days, they come out, and sure enough, there is a gas line. Our gas line runs so close to our mailbox, and it helped me learn because we actually ended up having to replace our mailbox later on, and it just was one of those things where I was like, man, that would have been so scary had we hit our gas line when we were replacing our mailbox later on if I hadn't contacted 811. It's just kind of funny because you do hear that a lot. I know our locators hear that frequently where they're like, oh, well, we didn't think we needed to call because we know where everything's at. Well, you may think you know where everything's at, but this is just an example of, no, we don't always know that. It's just better to be safe and not risk, I could have gotten injured, my husband could have gotten injured, and then not to mention that we would have had a pretty hefty bill, I would imagine, from the gas company for damaging that line. And then, on top of that, I think another important thing to note is just making sure that we're putting in our information accurately when we do place a one-call ticket. Mm-hmm. If we aren't putting where we're actually going to be working, that doesn't do any good. The locators, when they're looking at these tickets and they're reading the work information, need to know where they need to mark and where you're going to be working so that, they're not mismarking an area or not marking, 200 feet to the west when you're actually going to be right on top of us, right? So That's a really important thing, is just make sure that all the information on those one-call tickets when you're placing them is accurate.
Exactly. 811 is always important to be the first communication that goes out to the facility owners that are in the area of your work. But within that notification, the excavator or the one who's going to be digging needs to provide as accurate information as possible. The whole thing is a communication hub. Our excavators communicate to the utilities through the one call that digging is going to take place. And the more accurate that information is, the better the locator can respond to it, provide the markings that are necessary, maybe even realize it's all clear if the information shows that workers are going to be on top of their lines. So a lot of opportunity to improve that communication.
Absolutely. It's interesting that you say that because I think a lot of the misconception is that, any pipeline, any telephone line, anything of that sort is going to get automatically notified if they're on my property. And I do think that is a misconception when people contact 811 because there's a lot of things that go into play from a member perspective of setting up that mapping on the back end with a GIS department and making sure that we set up a buffer zone to be notified of the tickets within a certain distance. And so I've gotten several calls from, more so homeowners than anything. And I think that that's something important to know also.
Yeah, and when it comes to the public awareness of homeowners, that is such a huge portion of our state's population, right? There's far more non-professional excavators than there are professional excavators. And then when there's a non-professional or a homeowner, how do we know when to target them? Obviously, in the spring, around April, National Safe Digging Month, we work with home improvement stores and tool rental places and stuff like that, trying to get ahead of the homeowners. But that doesn't always catch the guy who already has a garage full of stuff and he hasn't done a project in 5 years, and all of a sudden he decides he wants to plant a tree and may find a line the hard way. So we try to do all we can to help those non-professionals be aware. And luckily, with you being with the pipeline company, you know how important the pipeline markers are and how much information is on those. And then we do mail outs to anybody who's done locate requests. We do quite a bit that we can get information to the general public, hopefully to avoid circumstances where they just don't call. That's the hardest thing to fight, is the no calls.
I think that was really neat that you guys thought outside of the box with the beer for 811 Day this year. And I think you did that last year as well, right?
Yeah. So I am excited about that. Thanks for bringing it up. I get to talk about the fun project that we did. Yeah, this is the second year in a row that we've released a beer with a local brewery. They brew, obviously, no one at OK811, to my knowledge, is a brewer. So we went to a local brewery here in Oklahoma City, asked them to make a beer for us, and it's a pineapple Mexican lager that turned out really well. We released it on August 11th, A11 Day, and it's available in stores in Oklahoma. So if you are listening to this and you haven't gotten a chance to try it, you can either go to the tap room at Cross Timbers Brewery here in Oklahoma City, or you can ask your local liquor store to carry it. So good information there. And yeah, that is something that you're right, outside the box is definitely what we did. Because when you think of a billboard, this is how I pitched it to my leadership. When you look at a billboard, you drive by it and you're done, right? And we also have to hope that all the traffic that ever will buy a shovel drives by that one billboard. And so I looked at cans of beer as many billboards, a 6-pack of billboards walking around, and it's going to be in the liquor store, it's going to be in people's hands. I can see crews sharing a beer after work. So I just saw that as an opportunity, and we did get a lot of response last year and a lot of engagement from it. So we're hoping for even more this year. We doubled our production to get it more statewide than we did last year. So we're excited about it. So thanks for bringing that up. One of the different ways to do stuff.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. I'm surprised that you don't have other one call centers reaching out, trying to get that idea and take off with it, because it definitely seems like it would be a conversation starter when you are having, a get together and the beer's present.
Definitely. And so hopefully other one calls have. I know that North Dakota did one in April, and so they sent me the can art and bragged on it. I haven't gotten the beer itself, but I know that they had a beer called Ale 11. And so if North Dakota happens to listen to this podcast, North Dakota A11, please save a beer for me. But yeah,
right.
I think
you need to start a collection.
Exactly. Just any state that does this from here on out, just send me a beer. We'll have a A11 beer share. It'll be fun. So I know, right? So you're more than invited to come down to Oklahoma for that whenever it happens.
We want to ask you to subscribe to our podcast so that you can be the first to hear each new episode. If you are watching on YouTube, be sure to follow the channel for not only our podcast, but also educational videos on OK811 services. Follow us on social media to know of upcoming educational events, such as Safety Days or our Expo, or to know the next time we may be hiring. Thank you for listening to Digging Deep, an OK811 podcast. After you subscribe, be sure to share.
Yeah, so we've talked about it quite a bit today. Obviously, your role with NuStar. We talked about the damage prevention efforts and public awareness efforts that NuStar does, and then in partnership with Okie One. And then we also got to brag on that beer campaign as well. Is there something that when you think about why you do your job or what gets you up in the morning to go back to work and dispatch all these tickets and all this other stuff, is there anything like that you can explain that drive or that passion that you have for damage prevention?
Yeah, so obviously, given my background and what I went to school for, like I mentioned earlier, I've always wanted to help the community in some capacity. And it took me a while to really understand, once I graduated, there's so many other ways that you can help ensure a safe community. And this is one of those ways. I'm proud to say, I have an 11-year-old son, and he understands what 811 is and the importance of calling. And he's going to be an excavator someday, At some point, he's probably going to want to plant a tree, or, he's going to need to replace a mailbox, something of that nature. And he might even bring it up to his friends when they're passing, flags and there's paint on the ground. I think it's just one of those things where it is a way that you can ensure safety in the community. And it's so easy, right? They call you guys, they place the ticket, and then they just wait for the companies to provide a response. And then, they can call you with questions. And, Okie 811's website's wonderful. I do see a lot of different one-call websites in my role. And it's great because you have so much information available, not just for, member companies or professional excavators, but also for those homeowners and for the kids too.
Yeah, we try to do everything we can to get those resources out. I don't know if you saw my LinkedIn post the other day on an 811 day, but I have now claimed the story of Eugene getting a pool that's on our YouTube channel as a holiday tradition for parents to show their child. So it's so hopefully that'll take off. It's only 1 year into it, but why not make it a tradition, at least for Oklahoma parents, to show their kids what 811 is. So if you haven't seen that yet, Keely, you definitely need to go check out that video.
Oh, yep. I'm going to have to after this call, that's for sure.
Awesome. Well, Keely, I appreciate you so much. I know that you and I get to talk quite a bit on coordinating when doing some safety trainings. You've also shown up to some of our webinars that we do on Wednesdays. So I've always been appreciative of your feedback and your knowledge that you have in damage prevention and public awareness. So I appreciate you spending time with me and sharing even more information with our listeners that may not know much about NuStar, but now they do.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, MG. I really do appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. And for our listeners, please take the time to like and follow our YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you have any questions or have suggestions for future guests or topics, feel free to email me. My email address is easy. It's the word education@okie811.org. And I look forward to hearing from you. And thank you for all that you do to keep safe in Oklahoma.